So a good afternoon or whatever time it is over there. Probably good evening. It is a great privilege for me to be with you presenting at this conference. As many of you know, I started learning about Ismaili history 25 years ago, reading or binging the IIS books that my father kept at home. And now it feels a bit weird to sort of be talking about one of the topics that interested me at an IIS conference. So thank you for inviting me, and thank you, Dr. Dariush, for putting this together. You and your team have done a remarkable job, especially in light of recent events that probably also kept you busy. So today I'll be talking about the emergence and genealogy of the Nizari Imams at Alamut. And as a prelude to the topic, we need to sort of remind ourselves that Nizari Ismailis believe that Imam al-Mustansir designated his eldest son Nizar as his successor. I actually want to begin on this point because 3 years ago, Professor Paul Walker said at an Institute of Ismaili Studies conference that modern scholars, including some of our great IIS scholars, have not provided proper references to substantiate the claim that Imam al-Mustansir actually designated Nizar. He claims that no footnotes are offered, and he says we can't just take this for granted. Paul Walker asks, where's the actual report that Imam al-Mustansir designated Nizar? So I want to begin on that point. I'm not aware of an official response to this, so I thought as a side project, I would collect those references and just share them with you since they are, important to this overall topic. So what I was able to find is that our earliest sources, including one Nizari source, the Dustur al-Munajimin, which is familiar to the scholars present, as well as the Hidayat al-Amiriya, which is a Taibi source, both of these sources actually say that al-Mustansir designated Nizar as his Wali Ahad. Even the Taibi sources seem to admit that. Then we have actual historians. So Ibn Zafir says, or he reports that Nizar had received the wasiya, the testament of succession, from his father. Ibn Athir says that al-Mustansir had designated the caliphate to his son Nizar during his lifetime. Ibn Muyassir says that it is said that al-Mustansir enthroned his son Abu Mansur Nizar and designated to him the succession. There are even more than this. Al-Nuwairi also reports that Nizar was made the Wali Ahad of al-Mustansir by his father, and that there was actually an attempt by al-Mustansir for people to take bayah of Nizar. As-Safadi also says Nizar's father arranged bayah for him and sent dyes for him throughout the lands. Dahabi, in two works, says the same thing. Nizar's father arranged bayah for him. Ibn Kathir says that al-Mustansir had designated the authority, the Amr, to his son Nizar. Ibn Khaldun says al-Mustansir, with respect to what was said, had designated Nizar. Al-Makrizi also provides a report from other people that al-Mustansir Billah had enthroned Nizar and designated the succession to him, and actually attempted for the Fatimid court to take bayah of Nizar. And finally, Ibn Taghlibirdi, although he writes later than all these guys, he also has this report. So it seems to me, anyway, that the non-Ismaili historical chroniclers have widely reported that Imam al-Mustansir designated Nizar. And there seems to be a historical basis to Nizari claims on this matter, and hopefully that satisfies what Professor Paul Walker had raised 3 years ago at the IIS. There's also another report, and this is actually widely reported, where Hassani Sabah actually met Imam al-Mustansir Billah in person and asked him directly, "Who is my Imam after you?" And al-Mustansir said, "My son Nizar." Here I've quoted it from Ibn Athir, but I also noted that this exact same account is reported by many non-Ismaili, non-Nizari historians. So wherever this report comes from, it circulated quite widely. And I'm beginning with this because this entire affair of the Nizari Imams being present at Alamut and how they emerge, it all ties back to the reality of this designation, which is known as Nas. And as many of in the audience know, the historical Ismaili position has been that once an imam has declared a nas for his successor, that nas cannot be withdrawn or superseded by a second nas or a third nas or any of that. And this was always the basis of Nizari claims. And without this nas, there just wouldn't be a Nizari movement in the first place. So then, how did the Nizari Imams come to Alamut? So the most well-known narrative on this matter is what I call the Juvaini narratives. And this is basically a retcon imamah. If you watch TV shows and binge TV shows, you know what a retcon is. So according to the Juvaini narrative, which many modern scholars have just repeated, Nizar died in 1095. And for 70 years after Nizar, there is no Nizari Imam present in Alamut, and nobody knows who the Imams are after Nizar. There's just no trace of them. Then, according to this narrative, sort of all of a sudden, Ḥasan II, who was not an Imam, but the son of the Dai, Muhammad ibn Qiyā Buzurg Umid, Ḥasan II in 1164 merely claimed to be the deputy and the hujjah of a hidden or absent Nizari Imam, whom Juvaini says was non-existent. And then, according to this narrative from Juvaini, Ḥasan II later on hinted that he was actually the Imam, but he wasn't explicit about it. And then Ḥasan II son and successor, Nuruddin Muhammad, known as Muhammad II, it is he who explicitly claimed that the imamate belonged to him and his father, and it is Muhammad II who actually published for the first time a Nizari genealogy for himself and his father. And then, according to this narrative, later on, so after this is done, Nizaris start circulating or fabricating stories that actually Nizar's grandson had been brought to Alamut in an effort to sort of clean up the narrative. And this is why I call this narrative the retcon imamate. Because in a retcon, you just go back and you re-narrativize the past to match future developments. And, many TV shows and movie franchises like Star Wars, they do retcons basically all the time. And again, this can be found primarily in Juvaini, and a lot of the sort of Mongol, post-Mongol, Ilkhanid historians like Rashiduddin and Kashani and others, they follow this narrative. They follow the outlines of this narrative. I'm here to sort of poke some holes in this narrative, okay, to offer a counter narrative. So first, here's some evidence that challenges the idea that there were no Nizari Imams at Alamut for 70 years. So there's a text, and thankfully, Dr. Farhad Daftari, I would tell everybody that you can't just read his books, you have to read his footnotes. Dr. Daftari leaves breadcrumbs in his footnotes. So in one of his footnotes, he mentioned a historical chronicle by Al-Fariki. This is known as the Tariq Maya Farikin. So this is by the historian Al-Fariki, and if you can look at his dates, he lived contemporary to the early Alamut period. He was contemporary to the Qiyāma. But what's really important is that there's two manuscripts of Al-Fariki's Tariq. And what we have in the second manuscript, called Manuscript B, this was completed in 1164, but the events in it go up to 1154. So Al-Fariki is writing as of 10 years before the Qiyāma. And in this historical text, in his Tariq, he reports something from the Nizari Ismailis of his own time. So Nizaris in the year 1154 or earlier say to Fariki that Nizar was a designated imam, and he remained for a time, and then he departed, and that Nizar actually had progeny, And they even give the name of a son of Nizar. They say his name was Muhammad, and he had this title. And the report goes on to say that Nizar departed from Egypt. He fled to Khorasan to the house of Hassan Sabah. And then Nizar begot a son from the daughter of Hassan Sabah, and then he died there. And he designated this son. And then it says Nizar's son had his own son named Nizar ibn Muhammad ibn Nizar. And he goes on to say, so now this is Nizar's grandson, that at present, so around the year 1154, Nizar's grandson is the Imam of the Ismailis. That's what this report says. And to my knowledge, this is actually the earliest non-Ismaili historian who gives us a report that there is an Imam descended from Nizar at Alamut. And granted, some of his details we know are not correct. So we know that Nizar didn't actually leave Egypt, and Al-Faraki knows that. He says at the end, Nizar did not leave Egypt. But nevertheless, this report attests to the existence of a Nizari Imam, a grandson of Nizar, present at Alamut at least 1 decade before Hassan al-Azikri Islam declares the Qiyāma. So the next question I had is, okay, is this some isolated report in Al-Faraki, or is there more to this? So I actually found that there are historians after Al-Faraki who also report, you could say, corroborate the idea that a Nizari Imam was present at Alamut before Hassan al-Azikri Salam declared the Qiyāma. First, we have a couple of early sources. So Dr. Shafiq Virani has published several articles on a treatise by Qasim Tustari. And Tustari wrote a treatise in which he mentions blessed holy epistles that have come from the Imams. And Dr. Virani writes that this suggests that written epistles from the Imams descended from Nizar were being received by members of the Dawah at this time. And you can see that Qasim Tustari's work dates to 1131 to 1139. So that's before the Qiyāma. So there seems to be epistles, guidance from the Nizari Imams before the Qiyāma, before Hassan al-Azikri Islam comes out. Then Dr. Shiraz Hajiani, who's here, who gave an excellent keynote this morning, he has done great efforts to edit and translate and analyze a text from the pre-Qiyāma era. He dates it to 1147 to 1164. And according to this text, the Imams descended from Nizar were secretly present at Alamut, and they actually composed treatises. So this is very interesting. These are both pre-Qiyāma sources so far. Now, if we look to post-Qiyāma writings, even Juvaini, who hates to admit this, even Juvaini reports that according to the Nizaris, one of the sons of Nizar left a son in Alexandria, and an Ismaili Dai, Abu Hassan Saidi, he brought the grandson of Nizar to Alamut under secrecy. So even Juvaini reports this, and then we can go past that, though. I found a report from the historian Zakaria Kazwini. He's contemporary with Juvaini, but he doesn't seem as anti-Ismaili as Juvaini. And Zakaria Kazwini actually narrates a whole report where Hassan bin Sabah introduces a child imam to the Ismailis. And he says to them, this is your imam, this is your mu'alim. I've quoted that report on the slide. And it's very clear that this is a report about Hassan bin Sabah introducing a child imam, so probably a grandson of Nizar. Again, this is not an Ismaili source, so I don't think this author is just making this up. Then we have Rashida Din, who repeats in a more friendly way what Juvaini said, that a grandson of Nizar was left in Alexandria and he was brought to Alamut. And then we have Hamdullah Mustawfi. Again, he's writing later, but he also says that Nizar ibn Mustansir gave Hassan Sabah a child from among his own descendants. Hassan bin Sabah brought that child to Iran and took care of him. And then he later says, after Al-Azikri Salam claimed the imamat, this is because Hassan bin Sabah had brought a son of that Nizar ibn Mustansir of Egypt named Ismail to his kingdom. When that child reached adulthood, he had a son. So there seems to be several reports in non-Ismaili historian writings that do say that a descendant of Nizar, probably his grandson, was brought to Alamut and was present there, although this wasn't known to everybody. This brings me to the next point. So, who did Ḥasan al-Azikri salam, known as Ḥasan II, who did he claim to be? What were his claims? Now, according to the Juvaini narrative, which
Sorry,
again is the
Khalil.
retcon.
You have got 5 minutes, yeah?
Okay. According to Juvaini's narrative, which is a retcon narrative, Ḥasan al-Azikri salam only claimed to be the Khalifa, the Hujjah, and the Dai of the Imam, and he only hinted later that he was the Imam, and he speaks of the Imam in third person. But when you look at Nizari sources, and I'm happy to be corrected by the people at the conference who know this better than I do, I have not seen a Nizari source quoting Ḥasan al-Azikri salam where he speaks of the Imam as being anybody other than himself. Uh, Ḥasan al-Azikri salam does speak of the Qayyim sometimes in third person, and that's an interesting note because according to late Fatimid descriptions of Qiyāma, which I've written about and I've spoken about elsewhere, the Qaim al-Qiyāma is not an ordinary Imam. He actually stands above the rest of the Imams. And according to Fatimid authors, Nasser Khusru, Qadi Numan, Shirazi, when the Qiyāma comes, it will be announced by a special Imam who will be the Hujjah of the Qayyim, the representative of the Qayyim. So for Fatimid authors, Qiyāma is accompanied by multiple figures. It's not just one person who does it. There's a Qayyim who's actually sort of hidden behind the scenes, and the Qayyim has a representative who is an Imam in his own right, and he declares the Qiyāma. So as an alternative to Juvaini's retcon narrative, I would propose that it's possible that Imam Ḥasan al-Azikri salam, when he declared the Qiyāma, was claiming to be the Hujjah or Khalifa of the Qayyim, which in Fatimid thought is a claim to being an Imam. So this idea that Ḥasan al-Azikri salam claimed imama gradually, I think this could be totally revised. My great colleague, Dr. Dariush has also written recently that when Imam Ḥasan al-Azikri salam read out a letter which said he's the Hujjah of the Imam, even if we accept the wording of that, it's quite possible that al-Azikri salam was reading a letter of the previous Imam, his own father, declaring him to be the Imam's successor, because in Fatimid thought, Hujjah is also a name of the heir designate of an Imam. So that's something to keep in mind. So I think this whole thing could be revised and should be revised. Finally, last point. Ḥasan al-Azikri salam claimed to be a Imam descended from the progeny of Nizar, as did all of his successors. Was there anyone outside the Ismaili community who actually accepted this? Some modern scholars have said that the Nizaris hardly succeeded in convincing anybody that their imams are actually descended from the Fatimids. I would like to challenge that claim. What I did is I decided to check what do post-Alamut or sometimes contemporary Alamut non-Ismaili historians have to say about the Imam. So this is a quick summary. So Ibn Khalikan says that Nizar is the grandfather of the lords of the Dawa in the castle of Alamut. And he says that 2 times. Elsewhere, he says the masters of the castle of Alamut are genealogically related to the aforementioned Nizar. So Ibn Khalikan sees the Alamut Imams as descendants of Nizar and the Fatimids. Ibn Said al-Andalusi says that Hassan bin Sabah managed to reach one of the descendants of Nizar, and the caliphs of Alamut of this time, when he's writing, are from his descendants. Ibn al-Fuwati also says that Imam Jalaluddin Hassan and Aladdin Muhammad have an unbroken lineage to al-Mustafa Nizar ibn al-Mustansir. Al-Yunini, a Sunni scholar, says that Jalaluddin Hassan and his successor are genealogically related to Nizar ibn al-Mustansir Billah. I can keep going. The Alid Naqib ibn al-Tiqtiqa, this is like chief genealogist of the Alids. He says that the progeny of Nizar continues or completes with Jalaluddin Muhammad and his successor. Another Alid genealogist, Ibn Inaba, also traces the genealogy of Imam Aladdin Muhammad of Alamut, master of the castle of Alamut, to Nizar ibn al-Mustansir. Badruddin al-Aini, a Sunni Hanafi scholar, says that the lords of Alamut, such as Aladdin Muhammad, are genealogically related to Nizar. And finally, the Alid Naqib, Ibn Shakdam, Naqib is a genealogist. He also traces the descendants of Nizar to the lords of Alamut and the post-Alamut imams of the Muhammad Shahi line. He mentions them as well as descendants of Nizar. So anyway, I know I'm out of time. So my conclusion, if I can simply end, is that there's ample evidence in historical chronicles that al-Mustansir Billah designated Nizar. There is a lot of reports that an imam descended from Nizar ibn al-Mustansir was present at Alamut, including reports that date from before the Qiyāma, thanks to the great work of some of the people at this conference. The claims of Imam al-Zikri Islam, I think, require deeper analysis. And finally, it appears that non-Ismaili historians and genealogists widely accepted the Nizari Fatimid genealogy of the Nizari Imams of Alamut and by extension, the post-Alamut period. I hope this was helpful to you, and thank you very much.